listening to the Betmaker Show. This is the NFL Week 16 betting odds preview for Monday, December 16th, 2019. And now, live from Las Vegas, the host of the Betmaker Show, Brian Blessing.
All right, folks, it is absolutely one of our favorite segments. We get the opening numbers and the opinion from the odds makers who try to put the Rubik's Cube together, have an opening number leading into the games on a Sunday, then the reaction from the games on a Sunday, and then the anticipation from the odds maker side of what the market will do. Is that a fair, as we bring our pal Jack in, one of the top odds makers on the globe, is that a fair assessment, Jack? I mean, you have your opinion. You watch the game Sunday, you shade your opinion, but you also have to be Kreskin, the combination Kreskin and Dr. Phil, and anticipate, what the reaction will be from the market as well as you put the number up.
I think it's a fair description, Brian. I mean, I think we do our best to. I mean, anybody can take the basic stats and come up with a number, and then it's just the manipulation of it after that to appease the public and not get crushed on a runaway game.
All right, sir. And it is borderline terrifying that we have 2 weeks left in the regular season, but the playing field's been determined now for many teams. The actual combination of who's going to play who and where remains, so motivation's there. And then an Atlanta upset of San Francisco really opens the door for a few teams in terms of, the road to the Super Bowl is going to go through what city. So it's an interesting time. There's no getting around that.
That's right. So let's get at it.
Let's go. And let's start. How about with the four? Well, let's do the Monday night game. Indy and New Orleans. New Orleans is laying 9, 46.5, 47, 47.5. It's kind of a mixed bag. New Orleans is Indy's a cornered rat with, a gazillion to one shot to get in. But New Orleans, with seeing San Fran lose, maybe gets a little bit of bounce in their step, and they'll be rooting for the Packers to lose a game because they desperately want at least a bye in a home game.
Right. There was a big loss by San Francisco yesterday. A very exciting ball game. And now New Orleans has a chance to catch up due to that game they lost a week ago to San Francisco. And they're a prohibitive favorite. We opened this game 8.5 and 44. The game's sitting at 9. The total's been bet up to 47. And I think that's always the anticipation of just money being bet over on a standalone game, whether it be Thursday night, Monday night, Sunday night, whatever.
All right, Jack. So, let's throw the Thursday deal out of the equation now. And we've got 3 games on Saturday. So short week for both teams, but we're looking at 3 games. These are games that matter in a big way. But the Rams-San Francisco game may have been one of the games with the biggest reaction of what the number would have been on a Saturday as opposed to what it is today. L.A. at San Fran. Tell us what you got.
We opened San Francisco. We opened 6 and 46.5. Right, and then we went to San Francisco. Reopened at 7. Now it's down to 6.5. The Rams played terribly yesterday. That was obvious. San Francisco probably didn't play that poorly against Atlanta. There was just a last-minute drive that took them in there. I don't think they performed up to what they wanted to as a 10-point favorite, and the game was still in doubt to the very end. But San Francisco handled the Rams earlier in the year very easily. Both teams should be fired up for this game. It's a big one for both of them. As you said, if New Orleans wins tonight, San Francisco has to try and stay in front of them, and the Rams are fighting for a playoff spot. So it's very important to both teams.
Yeah, it's one thing to be great, early and long stretches of a season, but it's about peaking at the right time. The Niners thing is not that distressing to me. In fact, Jack, I had a weird feeling, and I believe we discussed this at some point last week. Atlanta, you got to give them full marks. Since the bye, they have showed up. They've played for Quinn. But for San Fran, if you look the last 4 weeks, a great win at New Orleans, last-second loss to Baltimore. You look at the gauntlet they'd been playing, and then the Rams are in the on-deck circle. All of a sudden, here comes Atlanta. I don't care who you are, right? It's a human nature thing. That intensity level, it's such a hard thing to put your finger on.
As you viewed as you viewed the game yesterday, you could tell they just weren't as sharp as they have been at many times during the season, and I think it's due to the factors you just pointed out.
Buffalo and New England, to me, with the Bills having clinched a playoff berth, they got home last night at 2 a.m. in the morning to secure a wild card spot. And there's an army of fans at the airport ready to greet them. And you think, okay, they made the playoffs in a letdown spot. Going to New England, and this is old hat to New England. But I think Buffalo, and they still have a shot, right? If Buffalo wins the game at New England and wins their last game against the Jets, New England would have to stub their toe against Miami. You know what, Jack? I would say this, crazier things. New England got away with it. Cincinnati, if you watch the first, you look at the score, New England killed Cincinnati. Cincy had a chance to jump on them and take a pretty good lead. They missed on a 4th and 1 when the game was tied, and then Dalton made one horrible throw, and all of a sudden the game was over. But there's just no getting around the fact New England's offense, there's just something not right there. And you're talking the number 1 and number 2 defense was the thing that you had to put the pencil to.
Right. This is we opened New England 6.5 and 38.5. It was bet up to 7. Now it's back to 6.5, and the totals hung firm at 38.5. It's a very tough spot for Buffalo. Even though they played the same day, if you look at the schedule, they both played on Sunday. As you said, winning, traveling to get home. They basically, it was a day because, Belichick was ready on the plane to start working on next week's game. So it's almost as if New England gains almost a day on them. And I think that's important in the preparation. It was a very tough game the first time around. Buffalo, outside of a block punt and a miscue here or there, it was anybody's game. And you can probably expect the same this Sunday. Buffalo's a tough opponent, good defense. Don't make the big mistakes that Cincinnati did, and you're in the game.
I'm just, real quick, just the belief, and when you're putting a number up, public perception and what the market will do. But I wonder about Buffalo and what people actually think of them. I think the common thing is, the offense and Allen is inconsistent. And to me, their problem is the smallish wide receivers are a defined problem for them because the passing lanes are so tight when they get into the red zone. But if you look at their 4 losses this year, Jack, they were killing the Eagles, fumbled the ball late in the first half, and it was a deflating moment. But other than that, their losses, Allen was hurt at the end of the game, but Buffalo had the ball with a chance to beat New England on the last possession. Buffalo had the ball with a chance to tie Baltimore, and Buffalo had the ball through their own stupidity and clock mismanagement at the end of the game, had the ball in their hands at the end of the game at Cleveland. They're in every game. New England's actually been rolled in a couple of games. Buffalo, they are literally in every game because of that defense.
And one of the points you made there was Buffalo's generally overlooked, and I think they have been since they've become competitive again in the last couple of years. But one of the reasons, and I think it may be going away, is now they've played a Thanksgiving Day on national TV, and everybody's seen them handle a good Dallas team, a decent Dallas team. And they've seen them play on Thursday night and handle a decent Pittsburgh team. So I think part of the observations that people are making is, hey, on a Sunday on DirecTV, or if you're not a Buffalo fan, you're probably not going for the Buffalo game. But now that you've seen them, you're saying to yourself, this is not a bad team, and they are very competitive.
All right, we'll move on from this. The funny thing I will just say is, as a Bills fan and from Buffalo, and I watch this team religiously, I'm watching the game last night. And the stuff Chris Collinsworth's saying, I'm like, is this the first time you ever seen them play? I swear it was like, the Trey White. Boy, this guy's an emerging superstar. I'm like, where you been? This guy's been one of the best lockdown corners for 2 years. They act like these guys just arrived on the scene. And this is people that should know. So if you could say that about a guy that does it for a living, what's the general public think?
Right. That's the thing. We just don't see them enough. They're not the featured team on enough Monday or Sunday night games. I know you can only fit so many teams in, but they force feed you New England, they force feed you Dallas, so you're very aware of those teams, and you overlook some of the contenders.
All right, this is a really intriguing game. Houston at Tampa Bay. Obviously, you look at it and say, hey, a lot of talent on the field here. Track meet city, the total reflects that. But boy, this Tampa Bay team, they're sneaky good, Jack.
They are. There was I know that one thing yesterday, I don't know, and we've talked about it over the weeks. The stat against Winston was 27 touchdown passes and 24 interceptions. And that's just impossible. If they could eliminate those turnovers from him, I mean, this team is a contender. But unfortunately, you can't do that yet. Now they've lost Mike Evans. One of their other good receivers, Goodwin, got hurt yesterday. That's a factor for this. We opened Tampa Bay pick. Tampa Bay went to 1 briefly. Now it's Houston 2. I think that's basically on account of the injuries to the receiving core. The total opened 53. It's now 52.5. Again, the receiving core valuation, I believe. But, yeah, I wouldn't want to overlook this Tampa Bay team. This Tampa Bay team may be as good as the Tennessee team that they played yesterday, and they were a 3-point underdog, and they handled them, but it was tied 14-14 late in the third.
I mean, you would think at this time of year, my goodness, there's so much on the line. But you play this big game, everything matters with Tennessee. Then you go, and not only are you playing a foe out of conference, they are playing well, and then you got Tennessee in the on-deck circle. On paper, it's a brutal spot, really, for Houston.
It is. If it weren't for the injuries, I think Tampa Bay would remain a 1-point favorite.
All right, great. Detroit and Denver. Question is, who's playing hard? Who wants it? I think Denver is playing hard, and I don't know what you do with the snow game. That was really fun to watch. Those are kind of throwback games. But when you see a game in such adverse conditions, Jack, I'm not saying you draw a complete line through it and throw away. But is it harder for next week's number or to really grab an opinion out of a game when everybody was sliding around? I remember that, what was it, the Niners? Remember the Niners-Washington game when they were basically playing in a swimming pool? Is it hard for next week's number coming off a field like that? We're talking about Denver-Detroit here. We'll ask you about KC in a moment.
It is. I mean, first of all, we'll just discount the game yesterday. Kansas City, Mahomes played great in that inclement weather. Denver didn't play as well. I don't think it was a good test of their defense. As you know, the receiver knows where he's going, the defender doesn't, and guys tend to get wide open. And you would think that Denver would be used to playing in some bad weather, but it just seemed to favor Kansas City yesterday for whatever reasons. Now, Detroit's a team that I don't know if they're playing hard or if they're playing hard and they're just a terrible team, but offensively they're challenged. It's difficult to score. It's difficult to score without a real NFL quarterback. Well, it's only good moments so far with it early in the first half against the Bears on Thanksgiving Day. So Denver opened 6.5, briefly went to 7, back to 6.5. I think it sort of climbs back up because I think Denver is at least trying, and they have some talent. I think Detroit may be trying, but lack the talent.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think, again, Denver lost 23-3 at Kansas City. But again, if you took the field conditions and there were, crazy, goofy things that happen in a game because of that, if you threw those conditions out, the way Detroit's going, honestly, this number looks light to me. I mean, I don't know. Is there any way it gets through? I think it's 7 for sure. Is there a way it gets through 7?
Well, you were sort of prophetic last week with the Jacksonville game. Everything was Oakland. All the money was on Oakland. The game hit 7, and Oakland dominated the game, and somehow they managed to lose it.
Oh, that was ridiculous.
Those things can happen, but everything went the way you observed it, and it's the same thing here. You have one team. Denver's definitely a better team. They're playing at home, and they're playing a team that might not have their wholehearted effort in it. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think 7 comes back.
All right, well, perfect segue to Oakland and the Chargers, because thank you for remembering that there is, full disclosure, here's where you go with this. Yeah, I was right that number was low and that number was going to go up. But I was wrong because I thought the Raiders were going to take them to the woodshed, and they beat themselves. Their management of that game at the end was a disgrace.
Well, the referees certainly didn't help them when they called Carr inbounds or out of bounds on that play.
That's right.
I mean, every time a quarterback starts to slide, they usually mark it back a yard. Here the guy started to slide, slid in bounds, and they said he was out of bounds.
Well, the play ends when you give yourself up.
That's right, where the slide begins. So the clock keeps running. They don't get the 5-yard penalty. They're under the 2-minute warning, and it's probably a different outcome, which trust me, I appreciate it. It was one of the few games we won yesterday.
All right, there you go. So let's talk about the Raiders and the Chargers now. Well, first of all, the thoughts heading into the weekend. The big takeaway for me, big picture, Jack, beyond just this game, that's got to be the end of Phillip Rivers, doesn't it? I mean, wouldn't you think that's all she wrote?
He seems to be throwing fair catch punts into the middle of his own defense and expecting it to work out. I don't know how. I don't know if he may have the same talent. Perhaps he's just. And I see him laughing on the sideline sometimes afterwards, and it's like I'm shocked. I mean, you used to be so competitive and everything, and now it's like you're content with this. So yeah, I think it is the end.
And the other thing I would say in this era of the game, I mean, okay, if you're a statue, if you're a pylon back there, but you got a cannon, and between his ears, he knows what he should do with it. But with the speed of this game,
they were supposed to take the lead before halftime with a field goal, and he gave Minnesota a touchdown. It seemed like because he didn't want to get hit.
Okay. Imagine this. We're diving into this game, but this is the challenge you face in the last 2 weeks. I would think if it's not this week, it's certainly next week. But why the heck not now? Do the Chargers take a real hard, long look at Tyrod Taylor in the last 2 weeks and then figure they're drafting a quarterback in the draft? But if you and I are sitting here spending this much time talking about Phillip Rivers today with 2 weeks to play, don't you want to know what you got with Tyrod Taylor?
The Chargers are in a terrible predicament. They count on Rivers just going on as a good quarterback forever. Now they have Tyrod Taylor. Now he may be able to fill in and he may have a capable game, but we know he's not the answer. He's been bounced from several teams already.
Right.
Not that those teams have to be right, but each team evaluated him and said, well, we'll move on. So they're in for a languishing sub-500 time for a few seasons, I believe.
When there are so many gray areas, Jack, what's harder for you, the side or the total?
Probably the side, because you're also in the vicinity with the total, and you have more numbers that are unimportant, and you can sort of jump around them. As we talked about the game before, 44-47, and we're really not in bad shape with the total. It's like starting fresh on Monday. And same thing here. I mean, this game's not going to go higher than 51. It's not going below 44, so it's not just balancing it in between. Now, surprisingly, there was a lot of money. Jacksonville and Oakland, I would have thought would have been an over game, and everybody bet it under yesterday, and they were right. Now, this game, the Chargers we opened 6.5 and 47. It currently sits at 5.5 and 47. And I guess the read from some of the wise guys was, well, neither team's going to try, but I'll take some points anyway and see what happens.
Oh, well, here's an interesting one. I think at least for you can sit back, relax with Jacksonville, Atlanta, sitting on a key number. Don't think that's going to go anywhere. The total's the intriguing one to me. I mean, Atlanta's been playing hard. In Jacksonville, you got to give them full marks. The Raiders let them hang around, and they kicked the door down. To me, the big thing would be I like the over in this game, and it's kind of a weird between the lines things. But how about this would be, I would think, maybe a rarity that both teams played on grass fields this week and now go and play on a fast track indoors. And I could see both of these teams maybe producing some points as a result of something as goofy as that.
Well, this fits up the scenario that you pointed out a few weeks ago, and I agreed with, that generally if you get two teams at the end of the year out of contention, it tends to be more loose, and teams make more chances, and they may go more on fourth down. A lot of crazy things can happen, usually favoring the over. Atlanta yesterday, Jacksonville, like I said, as you pointed out, there was a lot of money against them yesterday, and they were very lucky to win that game. Statistically, they weren't in it. Atlanta played a good game against San Francisco. I think this will be the same situation. This game opened 7-46. It's now 7-45.5. Like you, I anticipate the total going up. I think Atlanta goes through the 7 and goes to a 7.5 point favorite, just because there really wasn't a win for Jacksonville yesterday.
Let's make some money tonight.
For outstanding information and special offerings and promotions, we invite you and encourage you to sign up for our newsletter today simply by going to the website at betmaker.com. Out of curiosity, Jack, do you play fantasy football?
Yes. I was eliminated. I didn't make the playoffs.
All right. Well, I'm in two different, actually similar leagues, but where it's a compilation of points. So you're not playing anybody head to head. But there are those people that just thumb their nose at fantasy football. I'm in, two really fun and vested interest, let me tell you, in fantasy football. And it helps me because I'll be watching a 42-3 game, like it's tied because of the level of interest you got with fantasy football. I would just say this to you as we move on to New Orleans and Tennessee. Let's see what happens with the Saints on Monday night. But I am telling you, Jack, it didn't shock me in the least. I have Derrick Henry on one of my fantasy teams, and I am telling you, I have watched this all year long to the point I want to pull my hair out. Derrick Henry could have 1,800 yards rushing this year. He's that good. And the play calling by this team is mind-boggling. And you know what? The play calling got him and probably cost him a playoff. Derrick Henry runs the ball, gets you all the way to the 3-yard line, first and goal at the 3, and Tannehill, who's done and he's played great, first and goal at the 3. They can't stop Henry, and he throws an interception. And you sit there and go, I've watched this all year long. It burned me all year long. It cost them a playoff berth yesterday. Unbelievable.
It was. Now, in full disclosure, Tannehill put the ball in the receiver's hands.
I know.
He gave it right to the defender, who then ran almost the entire way. Or did he run all the way after? I really don't remember.
No, he got like 90 yards. But, I mean, basically, the whole game changed on a dime. And then Tennessee made likely, well, can't say likely, there's a long way to go. But, it's a punch to the gut. It changed the whole damn game when I get mixing it up, but when the guy's getting 6 yards at a pop and he can't stop him, why are you overthinking stuff?
Well, it's a 14-point swing on a game that they lost by 3. So, I mean, there's a great possibility that it would have been a different outcome, but you never know. But I thought Tennessee would play better than they did yesterday. And you've been harping on this for a few weeks, and you're 100% right. They don't seem to I don't know if he's calling it, the offensive coordinator, what the breakdown is there. But Henry is doing great. Maybe they think by throwing so much, they loosen it up for him, but he could get the ball more. I think you're right.
All right, so much of this depends on the situation. Tennessee's, level of desperation must win with Houston coming up next week. I think we'll know a lot more about New Orleans right after the Monday night game, and the motivation's there for them to try to get a bye. But we're sitting here, New Orleans, a 1.5-point favorite, pending the result tonight. How much could this number move tomorrow morning?
Right now I would say after the Tennessee loss yesterday and New Orleans, if they win tonight, whatever happens tonight, if they lose, they have to play harder. And if they win, they're right there with the other teams to the number 1 seed. So I think it probably goes to 3.
Giants and Redskins. Hey, you know what? Full marks to both of these teams, going nowhere fast. Honestly, the Redskins, maybe more than anybody to me, have been really impressive how they've embraced the Haskins kid and have not run for the bus. They've really played hard, and it's a team that's just really doesn't have a boatload of talent, but they have not run for the bus.
No, they've been trying. The Giants have tried the last few weeks. I know it wasn't as big a blowout as it appeared yesterday against Miami, and they certainly could have beaten Philadelphia on Monday night before that. Meanwhile, Washington, they gave Philly all they could handle. And then for the players got a break on the last play of the game when Haskins threw the lateral and they ran it back for a touchdown. What a swing.
It happened twice yesterday.
Yeah, and both times in favor of the players, and good for them. They had a week coming, and they enjoyed it. That was a big one for the Philadelphia game and a big one for the total for San Francisco.
All right, let's move on to Pittsburgh at the Jets. Steelers laying 3, totals 38.5. Pittsburgh, hard-fought, physical game, important game for them, and they were finding ways to win the close football games, but very much alive. All the motivation is on the Steelers side. It comes down to, what can they do on the road in terms of point production. It's sitting on 3, Jack. If anything, does it go up?
I think it goes up. Pittsburgh has to win one of the last 2 games to make the playoffs, and their last game is with Baltimore. And that'll depend on Baltimore's frame of mind, having the number 1 seed locked up in their conference. But if they want, that's a rival, Pittsburgh, they may want to put them out of their misery, but with Jackson playing. But if he weren't to play, they'd have a good chance. I think Pittsburgh focuses on this game. Beat the Jets, get in the playoffs. I think this number goes up to 3.5. And although I was impressed, the Jets lost in a blowout to Baltimore, but I thought they showed potential. I thought they played well outside of a few key mistakes that they always make. And the Jets are not a walkover at home, as Oakland found out when they went in there. So Pittsburgh goes in there 3, anticipated going up, total 38.5, and probably a hotly contested game.
I think it's intriguing. It's amazing how it cycles. Well, I'm going to go off the board here. We'll go down to Baltimore, Cleveland, and we'll come back up. But the reason being, if Baltimore wins, say they've got home field locked up, and you're right. I think even if they've got home field locked up, there's a fine line between resting guys and then not having played an actual football game then for 3 weeks. So I think more and more we see teams, the rest thing, maybe you play half and then you rest them. But the fact that it would be Pittsburgh, I think Baltimore would maybe embrace the role of being the ones to put the Sasquatch foot and kick them out. But if give me a number, Pittsburgh at Baltimore, the game meant something. And then Pittsburgh at Baltimore, if Baltimore doesn't need the game and the fear is they're going to rest a lot of guys, what would the difference be, at least on the front end, in your estimation?
Well, off the top of my head, I would estimate it this way. I would say that Baltimore, it's Baltimore at Pittsburgh or Pittsburgh at Baltimore?
It's at Baltimore.
It's at Baltimore. Baltimore was a 17-point favorite over the Jets. The Pittsburgh, we're basically saying, is 6 points better than the Jets. So now we're down to 11, but it's a conference rivalry. So we're going to cut that down. If everything meant everything in this game, I would open at 8.5.
If it meant everything, then if the gray area exists, would it be a touchdown or would it be under a touchdown and let the market decide?
If it was gray area, I would open at 7, probably dog money, in fear that the one team would not be playing as hard as we knew that Pittsburgh would be playing. Then if you found out the information that they were going to dog it, now you're down to probably in the 3.5 range and waiting for money to move it.
Cool. Good stuff. I mean, that's the cool thing, maybe to, be a fly on the wall and get between the odds makers' ears and see what they're thinking there. Appreciate that. That was good stuff. All right, let's go to Cincy and Miami. Miami, well, what was the thought going into the weekend? Let's do it.
Miami was 2.5 and 45.5, and it was now it's down to 1 and 46.5. I think you pointed it out before. Cincy, don't look at the final score. Cincinnati played better, or had the chance to play a much better game than they did against New England. Miami didn't show that well against the Giants, who are not a good ball club. And Cincinnati is hard to evaluate because it had only been 2 games since Dalton had come back as a starting quarterback, in which time he handled the Jets, and then he lost the New England game, and there was another one. They played Cleveland. They lost by 8 points. So I think Cincinnati is more of a team on the upswing than Miami, and basically it'll come down to a pick'em game.
Miami's the worst home field advantage when they're a winning football team. A prop, Jack, you tell me, over under 13,427 people at the game.
I'll go for 428 and go over.
There you go.
I may have to buy a ticket to win it, but okay.
Oh, Baltimore and Cleveland, we alluded to that, or at least Baltimore's thought process. This Cleveland team, man, pardon the pun, they're a dog's breakfast. Yikes. I mean, all the hype. So many. How do you, I would think they would be one of the most confounding teams for an odds makers all year long. The hype machine was rolling. But honestly, Jack, I mean, it's on full display. Yeah, there's talent there, but there's so many me guys that I don't even know how you put a number on these guys.
No, I think it's one of those cases where they read the preseason press clippings and actually believe that they were that good without becoming that good. And I think it's taken a toll on them, especially perhaps Mayfield. Beckham, naturally, he's already saying he wants out of there. I don't. These guys just want to be on a Super Bowl winner without putting in the hard work to become a Super Bowl winner. I don't know how that works. But anyway, Cleveland is a tough team. Baltimore opened 7-49. Baltimore is now up to 10 after the performance yesterday against Arizona. If Kyle Murray can do that to them, what can Lamar Jackson do to them? So I think that was our thought process there. The total remains at 49. And that'll get to this time of year. It always depends on outdoor game like Cleveland. It always depends on the weather.
It's funny when you see little stuff like this and you're just chatting. Revisionist history. The draft is such an inexact science, and okay, it's today. But I've kind of thought this as talk to me in a decade. But Baker Mayfield this, Baker Mayfield that, Josh Rosen, and the guys that people thumb their nose at Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson drop like a rock, and look at the two quarterbacks that are coming out of that draft and where they are today.
And I'm one of those fools because I would have thought that Jackson should have been the last one picked there, and I was totally wrong.
Dallas and Philly. Okay, Jack, we've been talking about this game for a month, so they're finally going to play it.
They are, and we opened Dallas a 1-point favorite, 47.5. Right now, it's 3-dog money, a lot of 2.5 minus money out there, and still 47.5. It's just a reaction. This game was won before yesterday. Philadelphia easily could have lost to Washington, and Dallas just thumped the LA Rams. I mean, if you have your number, which is probably 1, which is what it was when we started, and now current form, you're going to have to favor Dallas a little. They look more potent offensively and defensively.
Is this game not the definition of where things stand? We've had this discussion before. I've been saying it now for 2 years and enjoy doing this with you. 5 years ago, like you said, Phillies won 1.5. But in this era, based on what you last saw in a 24-hour window, we see NFL numbers roll. And it's crazy to me. This was never what happened in the past. Dallas, good for them. They played a good game. I would say this: if Phillies, you can say Phillies not playing great. I honestly, I look at them and say, finding ways to win the Giants and Redskins games when their life depended on it at the end of games, even though they didn't play well, that means something to me. I don't know. I just think it's an overreaction.
There was a time, as you state, that it would have been you would always want the team off the loss rather than the team off the win because you would factor in motivation. But nowadays, with the shape that these guys keep themselves in during the offseason, all the training and rigorous stuff they go through, I don't think it's like it was back then, perhaps when it was more motivation. Everybody's as up as they can be most of the time. Everybody should be at a 10 level all the time, but I would say they're always at an 8. They peak at 10, go down to 6. And I think although Philadelphia is as motivated as Dallas, as you said, they came out and they came from behind and beat the Giants. They came from behind and they beat Washington. But if they get behind Dallas, Dallas is better than the Giants and Washington. They won't be able to do it.
Yeah. Well, current form, I guess, means something. But, the fact of the matter is that win by Dallas over the Rams was Dallas's first win of the year versus a team with a winning record. And they're betting them like they know the score.
well, now they have got a streak going.
Yes, there you go. Arizona's at Seattle. You know what? Arizona, they play hard. I mean, they got absolutely drilled by the Rams. All right. But in every other game, they're building towards something in the future. Are they a hard team to put a number on? I mean, the game matters to Seattle. But Arizona competes.
Arizona competes. As you said, I think it's a credit to their coach that they play this hard. And outside of the one dud they laid with the Rams, their defense is porous, but they try their best to cover it up. Kyle Murray does his best not to turn the ball over and achieves that. And we said before, if you don't have turnovers, basically the game's going to be close to begin with. So that's how they hang in there. The game against the Rams, They gave up some special units plays, and they turned the ball over more, and they got blown out. Seattle's defense, I don't think, can do that to Murray. So this game was 10 and 48.5. Now it's 9.5 and 51 under a little money. So, yeah, I would even think it would go down. I think it's a good spot for Arizona to come play this game. Seattle coming off the road, traveling east and back home. It's a good spot for Arizona.
Jack, do you dissect, like, when I know you take everything into account, but real quick on Seattle's front, because, I think the common theme is, and it's interesting, like I'll go to Buffalo. Buffalo's 6-1 on the road. Jack, they play better on the road. 3 of their 4 losses are at home. I think they play a smart, sound, physical game, us against the world. They're a better road team. And we always talk about Seattle and Arrowhead, the 2 toughest places to play. If you dissect their schedule, they've actually struggled at home. I mean, every game is life and death at home. Do you, when you're making the number, do you go inside it that much and go, okay, well, wait a minute. Now look at their home record and their road record?
No, because I think you can get lost in all of that. In other words, if we look at Buffalo's record, okay, they're 6-1 on the road. They beat the Jets with a game that they actually should have lost.
It's a weak schedule. Yeah,
they beat the Giants at Tennessee. They won that game. That was when Tennessee wasn't playing well with Mariota quarterback. At Cleveland, they lost, and a game that probably should have won. At Miami, again. At Dallas was their first real test, and they passed it. At Pittsburgh was their second test, and they passed it. So, yeah, they're a good team. But, if it was on the line on the last week of the season, they'd play real hard to get home field advantage.
Good stuff. Good stuff. KC in Chicago. I'm looking at this Chiefs team. Someone said this yesterday, and I think maybe they're on to something. Mahomes is getting healthier. It seems like with each week, Kansas City's becoming more and more what they were in the first third of the year, or what they thought. The funny thing is, Kansas City's a weird team. They didn't have Hill for, 5-6 weeks in the first third of the season. Then Mahomes, the kneecap thing, and he's a crash test dummy. Kansas City is finally the football team from a health perspective that we thought they were going to be. Is that falling through the cracks a little bit?
I think so, because if you look early in the year, they started with 40-26. They beat Jacksonville. 28-10. They beat Oakland. Not the best teams, but they still beat them. They beat Baltimore 33-28. Handle Detroit, and then they play Indy, and Mahomes gets hurt. Actually, he gets hurt a little in the Detroit game, and from then on, they go into a slump until, as you said, they beat Denver 23-3. At New England, they win 23-16. They beat Oakland 40-9. It's going a different direction. So they're a very dangerous team right now. And if you tell me who's going to turn the ball over, more Trubisky or Mahomes, I know who I'm betting on.
Oh, yeah. There you go. And then we wrap it up with Green Bay and Minnesota. And I'll stick with it. I'm not throwing a parade because they beat the Chargers, but I'm pretty sure mentioned this to you last week, if not certainly with Bruce in our follow-up segment. I'm telling you, Jack, I think Minnesota is the team to watch out for. Thielen eased his way back in. Now Cook's banged up, but if they've got everything in place with the running game and spread out Thielen, Diggs, and Rudolph and Cousins and everybody, it's easy to say, oh, Cousins, but I think this is a team that has a real shot to not only make noise as a wild card, but the division's still in play. If you're ever making a future play, last week was the time to do it on Minnesota. I think they're getting right at the right time.
Well, let me put it this way. I'm going to compare 2 teams for you. One team averages 6 yards per play and gives up 5.3. The other averages 5.5 and gives up 5.8. Which team would you like to win the game? That's the situation. Green Bay, Minnesota averages 7.6 yards per net attempt, gives up 5.9. Green Bay averages 6.3, gives up 6.8.
There you go.
Minnesota's a much better team.
Green Bay's up. Phony's a bad word.
That's the word I would have chosen.
You think? Is it phony a little over the top? Well, maybe not.
I don't think so. I mean, Rodgers is still Rodgers, but I don't think he's Aaron Rodgers from a couple of years ago. I think would I still want him? I would, in a heartbeat, I would want him. But I don't think he's the guy that can carry a whole team by himself like he could a couple of years ago. And I think the supporting cast isn't that good.
All right, Jack. Great stuff as always. And then in advance, we'll say we appreciate you joining us next Monday, when that's the week where every morning you're taking like 4 Advil, waking up, and week 17, the oddsmaker's worst nightmare.
Well, we get closer to baseball season, which is fun.
Oh, the glass is half full in Jack's world.
The NFL is work. The baseball is fun. It's a nice 6 months.
And well, this season's flown by. You've been a treat to work with, Jack. We got a ways to go yet. As always, we appreciate you taking time here on a Monday to jumpstart a brand new week in the NFL.
Thank you again. See you next week.
Betmaker, let's make some money tonight.
Well, that's the Betmaker Show for now. We publish multiple times each week. We'd like to thank you for listening, and if you liked what you heard, please take a moment to leave a rating and review, or subscribe to our show feed, or share our show with a friend or two and help us grow the show. We very much appreciate it. Visit us on the web at betmaker.com, and reminder to sign up for the newsletter. Thanks to our engineer, Darren Vandermolen, and producer, Mike Gallivan. The Betmaker Show is a production of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated. Betmaker is a registered trademark. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this content without the express written consent of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated is strictly prohibited.
The handicapping and sports odds information contained on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please confirm the wagering regulations in your jurisdiction, as they vary from state to state, province to province, and country to country. Using this information to contravene any law or statute is prohibited. The podcast is not associated with, nor is it endorsed by any professional or collegiate league, association, or team. This podcast does not target and is not intended for an audience under the age of 18. If you think that you have a gambling addiction, stop this podcast now and please seek help.
Gambling and betting on sports is a form of entertainment and should be about having a good time. But when done excessively, it may negatively affect other areas of a person's life, such as their physical and mental health, school or work performance, finances, and or interpersonal relationships. At betmaker.com and the Betmaker Show, we're concerned about the addiction that gambling may cause, and for this reason, we encourage everyone to practice responsible gambling. An approach to gambling that helps you ensure that it remains an enjoyable activity. Here are the main principles of responsible gambling. Don't think of gambling as a way to make money. Always gamble with money that you can afford to lose. Set limits and stick to them. Never chase losses. Don't gamble when you're depressed or upset, and create a healthy balance. Always be aware of how much time you spend gambling or thinking about gambling. And do not allow gambling to cause you to miss out on time with family and friends or time spent on other activities you enjoy. By following these guidelines, gambling can be a good time and great entertainment. If you feel at any time that your gambling is taking away from important areas of your life, is causing you stress or depression, or is leading to financial losses that are beyond your control, please reach out for help. Learn more at responsiblegambling.org.